Okay, going live. Hello everyone, I'm Sanjay Gupta. I welcome you on Sanjay Gupta Tech School. So today we are having day 90 of this Salesforce Learning Bootcamp. And uh, if I talk about Salesforce QA, so this is part 4. And till now, you have learned lots of concepts related to QA. So today, Irwin will tell you how you can just create test cases and what test cases are. So I have Irwin with me for this session. So welcome, Irwin, on the channel. And
Thanks.
I hope you are enjoying sharing your knowledge, and I'm sure like people are enjoying learning from you. And I can see number of views like daily basis. Lots of folks are getting benefited with the knowledge that you are sharing. So I appreciate your time. Okay, so with this note, I just want you to please introduce yourself so that if someone new joins the session, so they should know about you. So over to you, Erwin.
Thanks, Sanjay. So, hello everyone. Good evening, and if anyone's who's across the borders or seas, so good morning to them. So, I'm Irvin. I am someone who basically hails from a non-tech background, and then came a day when I got fascinated by Salesforce after being exposed to it and looking at people working on it, and eventually I chimed in and got my hands dirty on it. Today, I am working as a Salesforce QA engineer in Blueprint Advisory. Talking about my experience, I am someone who is a certified nutritionist, a personal fitness trainer. Then I am a defense podcaster. And as I stated earlier, I am a Salesforce QA at the moment. With regards to Salesforce QA, I have 1+ years of experience with my nutritionist and personal fitness trainer profile. I have 9+ years of experience. I recently launched my military podcast that goes by the name Touch and Talks. Besides that, coming on to the technical ground, I am a certified administrator as well as a trailhead ranger.
Great, awesome. So um, in the next slide, like I just want to show you this QR code so that you can join this Telegram group. And if you have any kind of doubt, you can ask those doubts in the group. More than 3,000 folks are connected, so they are learning and helping each other. And this slide, like you can see, next week also we'll be having one more session. So today we have part 4, and next week we'll be having part 5. With this note, in the next slide, like if you want to receive all the session reminders, so you can follow Sanjay Gupta Tech School on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Telegram, and all the important links are available in the video's description. And please provide some reviews or feedbacks, right? So it will give us motivation. Okay, over to you, Irwin. So please proceed with the session.
Thank you, Sanjay. Okay, so guys, today's topic would be test cases. So before we actually dig in, I would like to clarify one thing, that when we talk about test cases and when we talk about test scenarios, those are two different concepts. People tend to confuse between them. They get baffled when they hear test scenarios, and post that when they hear test cases. Test scenarios are basically, you can say this, those situations, right, or a particular functionality or a phase of that functionality that is being tested. And test cases, as we can find on the screen, it's basically a set of steps which we perform in order to execute the functionality, in order to check whether the actual result is at par with the expected result or not. Which also means these steps help us execute the functionality in the correct manner, also to make sure that each and every step is working and is not breaking at any point. Why test case should be there in the entirety of having the QA process being followed for a particular functionality or a set of functionalities is because of the fact when we are looking at a test case, it gives us a clearer view of what particular functionality are we going to test in that particular set of steps. In short, test case. So the most important characteristic of a test case is to make sure that the test case title is very much describing or very well describing the functionality which is being tested. Let's say if we are just talking about the login screen, that if the user populates the correct username and password and hits login button, it should let the user go inside to the mailbox, right? Now the test case, let's say if I talk about the test case title, I would say that verify that the user is able to log in into his or her mailbox successfully after feeding the username and password fields with the correct values. So over here, what has happened is we have clearly stated the functionality which is being tested so that the end user, always consider the end user as someone who's not a tech geek, who's just naive, is not at all familiar with the functionalities, not at all good with the technical aspects of the functionality, can only perform if guided. So the test cases should be that much elaborated, not lengthy. The steps should not be lengthy enough. They should be short and crisp. We touch base that in the further slides. For now, I would also like to mention, as it's mentioned in the second point, that it's also a great way to cover the maximum use cases of functionality that is being tested, right? In a technical language, we address it as test coverage. Test coverage is nothing but tackling the functionality or testing the functionality from as many aspects and as many grounds as possible. Now coming to the fact that while we are creating the test cases, that what should be the mindset of the user or basically the person who is creating the test case, who is either a QA or QC, right? As I've stated earlier, the mindset should be always with the fact that our end user is naive. He or she does not know how to use the functionality. We are someone who's the guide for them. We are guiding them with the help of our test steps. Test case title should also be good enough in exactly explaining what is being tested. It should hold the steps, and the steps should be mentioned in a systematic manner to have the desired outcome received of the functionality which is executed. Before I touch base the test case components, I would like to show you something with regards to the fact that, just a second, let me just quickly share my screen. Let's say, supposedly I log into my org and so now that we are in the org, our main aim would be, while testing a functionality, that we have the clear instructions on what we have to do. Right? As of now, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a test case title, just the title. I'm not moving on with prerequisites, test steps, or test results, right? Our very first title is, I'm taking a real scenario right now wherein we are taking a candidate object and making sure that the minimum pay is not greater than the maximum pay. So in that case, we have to be very specific of what is being tested in our test case title. Let's say we'll be writing it down as verify that the minimum pay is not greater than the maximum pay on candidate layout. This is one of the ways wherein we can write it up. The second way can be verify that the user is not able to save the candidate record when the value of minimum pay is greater.
Irvin, can we zoom in?
Sure. I hope it's good now.
A little bit more. Yes, now it is readable.
Okay. So, talking about the second one, now we are writing it as verify that the user is not able to save the candidate record when the value of minimum pay is greater than the value of maximum pay. So, what our intent remains the same. The end user should be able to understand what we are trying to test over. If you see in both the scenarios, we have clearly stated that our main aim is to make sure that the minimum pay is not greater than the maximum pay on the candidate layer. Just adding one more point to it, let's say we write it down that at the time of creation, again, another two aspects of it. Verify that when the user creates a candidate record, okay, sorry, I've actually reached the limit. The candidate record with minimum pays value greater than maximum pays value, the user is not able to save the newly created candidate record. So again, we have clearly stated that the main intent is to make sure that when this is the case, the user is not able to save the new record. The another scenario comes in when we are just editing it, right? Verify that when the user populates a value in minimum pay in the field minimum pay greater than the value of the field maximum pay, the user is either we can say hit with a snag, which is more or less a completely technical language, or we can say that the user is not able to save the amendments made in the fields. Again, the intent is same. We are checking the same thing, that the minimum pay is greater than the value of the field maximum pay. But what we did is we have framed it in different manners, and we made sure that in every single statement it's clear to our user. We also covered the fact that one is a scenario when we are creating a record, two is a scenario where we are actually updating the record, just the values of it, right? So switching back to our deck and now talking about the test case components. As we just practiced for test case title, quickly defining it, test case title is nothing but a statement that describes the functionality that is being tested. It can be a smaller functionality, it can be a major functionality. It can also include a functionality where it has a dependency on the other functionality. Like we did yesterday, the moment we marked our test case with it was in FT and has defect, a defect gets populated, a related defect gets populated. So that's where a dependent functionality is also being covered in the test case title itself, so that the user gets to know what is being tested. Coming to prerequisites. Prerequisites are basically the preconditions or the requirements which are a must before executing a functionality. For instance, if I had been talking yesterday about the fact that we should have the status FT or Q in progress has defect, and if you mark it with this, we have a new defect populated, a related defect populated. So a set of prerequisites would be: one, that test cases tab should be available. Two, the user should have create permission on this very object. Three, that there should be status field on the layout, because we aren't getting this particular value in either of the fields. It's only configured for this very particular field status, and its pick list value FTQ in progress has defect. And at the end, we also, in this particular scenario, we are not talking of the fact that we are checking the severity, we are checking the priority, and we are checking the defect title. We are just more or less concerned about the fact that whenever we are hitting this value in the field, we are getting our new defect logged with the help of the automation. That's where we talk about our prerequisites. So just for a quick reference, let's say the following should be configured beforehand, right? I'm again taking the scenario wherein we were talking about the fact that the user is actually checking the functionality of the minimum pay, which cannot be greater than the maximum pay. So over here, we would be talking like, the first point would be that candidates tab is visible to the user. We can also specify a user that we are going to test it with. Let's say candidates tab is visible to the system administrator user, or if it's a standard user, then to the standard user. The other way of having the same point written could be that just moving it from here, selecting this, that the system administrator or standard user holds read permission for the candidate object. Right? The second point for us in the prerequisites tab could be that minimum pay and maximum pay fields are present on the candidate layouts. Right? Third would be, again, this comes in back to the picture, which is system administrator or standard user holds create permission for candidate object. It's very necessary to have these, otherwise you won't be able to create a record, right? If you're just editing the record, you're not creating in another test case, right? In that case, you can be like that these users should hold write permission, right? Over here, as we, in technical terms, we say edit permission to that for candidate object. So these are our prerequisites. If either of them is missing, we are not able to perform our activity, our functionality. The execution would fail right there itself. So as prerequisites are more or less the must-haves to be able to test the functionality. Coming to the next one, test case ID. Test case ID is basically a number that we get, which gets auto-populated on the tool that we are using. Many people use Jira. There are people who use TestRail, right? There are some people who use test case manager, right? And etc. etc. Coming to just to showcase that to you, right? Let's say if I just create this test case as of now. So you see that test case number is here. Consider it as that original tool which we are using. It's either Jira or test rail or any other tool. If I save it, we'll have this auto number populated. Okay, right? We want it. Let's change the status and save it. So what has happened? We got this test case number or test case ID populated. That is something which happens in our testing tools as well. Next one is link story, task or subtask, defect or bugs lookup. When we are creating a test case, we usually get an option to create the test case from our ticket itself, which is either on Jira or any other platform. In that case, a lookup is automatically generated on the test case of that particular ticket. If not, we can actually have the number or the ID of the ticket populated manually on the test case, and it will be linked to that particular ticket. Now, steps of execution, the most important part. You can say that steps of execution is in a way the backbone of test case. Test case is the composition of the various steps that we include for executing a particular functionality. So now navigating back over here, editing this record so far, okay, and let's say we are testing it with the system administrator user. So our very first step would be log into, recruitment org using system administrators credentials, right? We have been very specific about the fact that we are testing it or we are logging in with the system administrator profile. Next step would be, there are scenarios where people do mention about their landing page. There are also scenarios where people tend to avoid that. If we are actually performing that, we are considering that we should be like, upon logging in, the user lands on the recruitment app. Next step would be to navigate to the candidate object. So navigate to the candidates tab. So there are a few specific terminologies which you should leverage, right? One is navigating. We should not say that, now move to that tab. When having the technical touch to it gives it a little more relevance rather than using some casual or some other formal words which are not technical. Like in the initial phase, when I was talking about test case title, I said verify. I did not say check. I did not say look for. I directly said verify. So similarly, navigate to candidates tab. Fourth step would be, if we are creating the record, it would be click new, right? Fifth, let's take it as 4.1, wherein if you're editing a record, we would be like open an existing candidate record. Fifth step would be for the fact that we are creating, okay, let me just do one thing. Let's take the existing one later on, else it will baffle you people. Once after clicking the new action, we would expect a dialog window popping up. We should have the step like a dialog window in the name, new candidate, or whatever the window is named as, right, pops up, or you can write emerges, or whatever term you could use that would clearly state. The next step could be fill the fields with the required information. And in addition to this step, we could mention feed the field minimum pay with a value that is greater than maximum pays value. So again, we have clearly stated in the step that what we are intentionally going to do is we are going to populate a value in the minimum pay field, which would be greater than the value in the maximum pay field. Let's say I'm saying that it's 1,500 rupees for minimum pay, and for maximum pay it's just 1,000 rupees. So I've clearly stated it's an intention in order to check the functionality that we should be prompted with an error message for that. Right? Next step should be click save. Right? We have saved it. Eighth step, and the final step while creating a new record would be the user is prompted with an error message, and do state the message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. So here we are very, very much clear about the fact that we have listed down all the steps. So now even if I ask, like, a random person who's just working on this platform for the very first time, he or she would be able to follow these steps and should be able to navigate accordingly. Let's quickly perform this as well, right? Let's open another window and let's log in. First, we're talking about the fact that, we are logging into the org. We said that, which is clearly stated that log into the recruitment org using system administrator's profile. Okay, let's take this and gmail.com. Okay, so now that we are in, okay, it has just asked me for the authentication. Yeah, and we are in. Okay. So as I stated initially, the second step is completely optional, right? It completely also depends upon the fact what the configuration has been made to. Right? As of now, in this org, there's no such configuration that we are actually landing onto the recruitment app. So if I move here and I click recruitment, I've navigated to recruitment app. Again, I navigated. I did not move to recruitment app, or I neither switched to it. I navigated. Okay. Now next would be navigate to candidates tab. We have the candidates tab over here. Here we go. Next step is clicking new. When we click new, our expectation is that a dialog window pops up with the name new candidate or whatever the name is. So here it is, new candidate. Moving on to the next one, fill the fields with the required information and make sure that the minimum base value is greater than the max base value. So okay, my bad. I have actually logged into the wrong org where I don't have this field as of now existing. Right? So if I still show you the fact that how we are moving ahead with it,
Yeah,
right?
no
So just let
problem.
me.
I think if it is not required, we can skip that particular field.
Yeah. So our main intent would be filling the fields with the required information, having a value populated in both of them, and clicking save. And when we are clicking save, right, we should be getting a validation error stating that the minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay, right? And so here our entire set of steps have been performed, things have been executed, and our test case gets completed. Now coming to the point where we have our next point, which is expected result. So now what is an expected result? As we talked earlier, expected result is basically the end result or the desired outcome which we consider based on the requirement received by the customer. So quickly moving over here, not taking much of the time, right? And let's copy paste for now. And the first step is log into recruitment org using system administrator's credential, right? We can frame it as system administrator user should be able to log into recruitment org. This is the first step. The second step, which says that that upon logging in, the user lands onto the recruitment app. So in this, we can reframe it as upon logging in, the user should land on the recruitment app. So what we are stating over here is we are stating the desired possibility of the outcome. Moving to the next one, we should be like the user should be able to navigate, right, to candidates tab. Next one is click new. Indeed, when we'll be clicking new, we know that we are able to click new, right? But the user should know that the user should be able to click new. Then the next one is that the dialog window either emerges or pops up. We can be like the dialog window in the name new candidate should pop up or emerge. Next one is fill the fields with the required information. Again, the thing that comes up is that the user should be fill the fields with the required information. And over here, we don't have to actually change it, but instead we can have them in brackets, and here's the same statement stating that the minimum base value should be greater than the maximum base value. Last one is click save. Instead of having the user should be able to click save, we should have it like the user should be able to save the newly created candidate record. The last one is the user is prompted with an error message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. We can just rephrase it by saying that the user should be prompted with an error message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. So in our steps, we just clearly stated what we are going to do. In our expected result, we shared the expectation of our desired outcome. Coming to the test result. In test result, which is over here, which is also our actual result, we are going to make sure that we are posting about the fact that what has actually happened. So it would be like system user was able to log into the recruitment org. Upon logging in, the user landed on the recruitment app. The user was able, again, to navigate to the candidates tab, and the user was able to click new. A dialog window popped up or emerged. The user was
What is the label of this field? Just little bit scroll. Yeah. Now it is okay. Test results. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So the label of the field is test results. Right. The user was able to fill the fields with the required information, wherein in our expected result, what we mentioned was the user should be able to fill the fields with required information. Now this remains the same. Moving on to the next one, which is the user should be able to save the newly created record. It will be clearly that the user was able. The last point is the user should be prompted with an error message. It will be reframed to the user was prompted with an error message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. So over here, we have touch based all the test case components, and that's how they're important for us while testing, and especially at the time of UAT, we do give some kind of test deliverables, right? Sorry for that, a slip of tongue. And in the next session, we'll be talking about them. So even in my example over here, I have actually talked about this scenario wherein the minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. If I move ahead a bit, you would see that there is prerequisites. We are talking about the position tab as well, right? We're talking about the validation as well, which is minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. The test ID, as I stated, is a system generated ID. Or we can, like in Salesforce, we have auto number, we have text as a data type. So for the auto number, it's getting populated like C0001. And the story number or ID again gets populated automatically in some of the tools which we leverage, or in some cases, it's like we have to populate it manually. Coming to the next one, as we discussed about the fact, we have these steps of execution, we have steps, we have expected results. These are those same steps which you have followed here. There's nothing different in that. And so are the expected results. Coming to the next one. So this is the final thing as of now. But before we wrap it up, I would like to mention one more thing, that when we are talking about logging defects, when we are talking about logging bugs, we again have to make sure that we have some defect titles or the bug titles clearly stated. If I navigate to click the new action again, it should, let's say, the user was able to save the record when the minimum base value was greater than the maximum base value. So here I have to be very much specific around what the error is. If I'll be quite unclear, my developer would not be able to get that, and the defect would not be solved. So let's be very clear and be quick on this. Let's write it as the user was able to save the candidate record even when the minimum pays value was greater than maximum pays value. So it clearly states that our requirement was that this should not have been the case, but it is the case. Talking about priority, having a defect and talking about this priority is very important because it helps us and the developer to work on it and prioritize it either on the top of our priority list or moving it a little lower in the priority list. So let's say if it's P1, it's highly important. We cannot afford to have it, fix it later. When I talk about actual result, in actual result, I'm actually talking about the fact that when I created this test case, I had actual result populated over here, which was the test result. Over here, everything seemed to be working quite well. Now, when we're talking about actual result here, we'll be posting the result in a way that we are now considering the scenario that the user was not prompted with an error message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. Also, the fact that the user was able to save the newly created record, which in a way is against what was expected. So now coming to the expected result. Now expected result remains the same. The entire thing has to be here. So there are scenarios wherein we don't put the expected result in terms of steps. If not this, we can just write the fact that the user should be prompted with an error message stating minimum pay cannot be greater than maximum pay. If not the steps, we can have a statement over there stating what was expected, then what we got. Similarly, if you don't want to write the steps over there, you can actually have this written, that the user was not prompted and was able to save the newly created
So
candidate
this is actually the actual, okay, if we are logging the defect, right?
Yes, when you're logging a defect. Again, the ticket number comes in when we are logging a defect. It completely depends upon what tool we are using. In some platforms, it's auto-generated. In other platforms, we actually have to feed in the ticket number, which in turn helps us in getting it related to that. Let's say it's TCAT-1. Next one is the test case title. Right over here, we have the option to have a lookup. Again, in some tools, we do get the test case as a lookup. In some, we just don't get an option to have, the test case ID populated on it. Statuses can vary, but usually the most commonly used statuses are draft, accepted, defect, or, don't consider defect, it's just development, FT, or FT in progress, or FT complete.
FT means?
FT means functional testing.
Okay.
And in some scenarios, you will not find FT or functional testing. You would rather find QA. It's either QA in progress, or QA complete. Again, these are upon the discretion of the user who is using the tool. 1. 2, it is also dependent on the fact that sometimes some projects require their Jira board or any other board to be shared with the customer. So it's customer's call as well what statuses they want on the board. But again, there are some rare scenarios. Moving on to severity. Severity basically means how severe that defect is. Is it actually blocking you from the functionality, from performing the functionality and getting the end result? Or it's just a major one, it's not a blocker, or it's a minor one, which is like of the least impact on the functionality. Again, not a blocker though. So that's how we log defects, and at the end we get retesting results. In some portals or some tools, it's named as retesting results. In some tools, it is known as actual result again. But in that case, the actual result is more or less like a separate field altogether, the actual retesting results. Again, in this case, you have to mention wherein you said that expected result should be that the user should be prompted. So if it has been fixed, you would be like the user was prompted and was not able to save the record. This can be upon creation, or this can be upon editing the record. So that's when, and that's how a defect is logged. Coming to a similar concept, you must have heard about bugs, right? The last part of it, bugs. So the difference between the defect and the bug is clearly around the fact when I'm testing a functionality, I found an error or a glitch in that, that's a defect, which is quite related to it. And we have discovered it while performing that functionality or executing that functionality. If, let's say, you're performing the functionality of checking this the fact that minimum pay cannot be greater than the maximum pay. And what you find is that another functionality is not working, which was that the rating, let's say, cannot be greater than 5. You have put it as 6 and you're able to save it. Save the record when you of course met this criteria, but you weren't able to meet that criteria. In that case, you can log a bug because that wasn't a part of testing for this particular phase of the plan. So this was it for today. If you have any questions, guys.
Yeah, Irvin. So there is one question like, can you please tell negative test case at the same time? So I think uh, you covered one test case. So can you just relate it with the negative scenario quickly?
Okay, so for negative scenario, I would be picking the case wherein I mentioned about the fact that we are talking of the rating, right? Let's say the ratings as of now are only valid wherein we are having the values 1 to 5, right? So let's say if I'm leveraging the value 1, I'm good to go. I'm able to save my record, right? I'm leveraging value 2 or 5, I'm able to save my record. Let's say I take the value 0.99, I'm not able to save the record. That's where I'm bringing in the negative test cases or negative test scenarios, right? If I take 5.1 or 5.2 or 5.09, I should not be able to save the record. That should be prompting me with an error message stating that this is an invalid set of value. Similarly, if I talk about another real case scenario where we where we log into a functionality. Again, having the user logged into the Salesforce org in many scenarios plays an immensely essential role to be verified, because if the user won't be able to log in, we will be stuck and the functionality will not be tested. You people must have heard about LAP, which also stands for Login Access Policy, right? Wherein our system administrator user, let's say, has the ability to log in as someone else. Let's say Sanjay is the system administrator user. I am let's say, just a recruiter user. Sanjay wants to log into the recruitment org as Irvin Khurana. So what he'll do is he'll navigate to the system the Salesforce setup, right? The next step would be to navigating to the users tab, opening the users tab from the drop down under the main user tab, then opening my profile and hitting login. First step would be to just hitting the login action, getting into my profile and checking in for the candidate's object and performing the entire functionality. The other option could be he trying to log in besides login access policy while feeding in the credentials in the login page and populating a combination of either the correct information of username and password or a combination where the username is right and my password is wrong. But he's still trying to log in by hitting the login action button, wherein he should be actually prompted with the fact that the password is incorrect. Also, the fact having the negative test cases or the scenarios implemented for the login functionality, it would be more or less like being able to get stuck over there. When I say being able to get stuck, I'm actually talking about the scenario. Having fed the fields with the incorrect values for the first 3 times, on the 4th time, he should be blocked. He should be asked for a password, a reset of the password. Again, reset of the password is a positive scenario which we are testing, but for the very first the shots that we are given to it, we are testing in some different combinations. I hope you guys remember we talked about decision table testing technique. So that also came into the picture now. We took negative test case scenarios and we were able to find that out as well, that it was working. At the end, while creating test cases, Having the negative scenarios also helps us in working with our approach, which was to work with a constructive mindset but a destructive approach. I hope this answers the question.
Exactly. So we have one more question, and I think it is
Okay.
straightforward. So Dheeraj is asking how to attach evidence if the tester is trying to execute step by step in Salesforce. So I think we can do a
Okay.
screencast, right? We can record something and then.
Exactly. Exactly. So whenever you are creating test results, always make sure that, as Sanjay said, that we should have a screen recording of the functionality. Why that is important? That is essentially highly important because it helps the end user or us as well to revisit the same in the latter phase if it does not work, that it was previously working and what could have been the possible defect. Also, as we say, for many things we need evidence, right? This is our evidence of testing. So either post screenshots, post screenshots when required, like just for the UI sake. That's when screenshots are the best. Trust me, when it's about having a validation pop up, the best scenario would be to make sure that you're having a screen recording. Or if it's more or less with regards to permission set, make sure that you are leveraging screen recordings.
Okay, so I think we don't have much questions, and today's session was very interesting, and I just enjoyed whatever you explained because I can relate the things in first three sessions. You were talking about all the concept related things, and in today's session, like you explained everything practically. So I appreciate your efforts, and I can see Sumukh is saying great session. So those who have joined live, so I think they understood how actually we need to do systematic QA or testing, right? Because if we talk about development, so in development we develop some things and we just check whether that functionality is working or not. But with these sessions, I think people are able to understand how exactly you need to run a process for testing something. So testing is one thing, and to have a process in place, that is another thing. So guys, if you are following all these QA related sessions, so it is very much important for you. So those who want to make their career in Salesforce ecosystem as a functional consultant, so I think along with admin, if you have QA skill set, so you can get a job, because here you don't need to do any code stuff, right? Everything is functional. So we have two types of testing, like one is functional and one is automation. So in automation we need coding skill set, but in functional testing, like if you have admin knowledge, so you can just learn all these concepts through these sessions and you can just apply for the jobs. So even I think one more session is there that you will be delivering next week, and then we'll be having your journey session where you will be like telling guys like how you build your career in Salesforce ecosystem so that it will motivate other folks as well.
Sure.
Okay, so
Sanjay, I would just like to add one small thing for the folks.
yeah, sure.
Those who have been following the sessions, I would request you to do attend the next session because uh, we will be talking about the deliverables. And that's the most important factor of the entire QA process because over there in of having those documents and handing it over to the customer, that's where the entire thing comes on. And this will also have the factor wherein the buddy asks that, how should we show the results?
Right.
Those will also be included.
Okay, so guys, don't miss next session. So it will be happening next week. So I will send the reminders in the Telegram group so that you can join. So I think this is it for today. Thank you so much for joining this session live, and those who are watching the recording, thanks to you as well. and I hope all these sessions are fruitful for you. And I want to thank Irwin, and I appreciate his time. Like whatever he is doing for the community, I hope lots of folks across the globe will be benefited with this knowledge. So thank you, Irwin. So see you
Thanks.
next week, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks, everyone.